Thank you. Mary Lou.
This community needs to have a very frank and open discussion about the resources that are available to the city to execute all of these capital improvement needs, all of the desired bathrooms and or whatever. We did a Springs Community Improvement Project several years ago. These are the famous skip bonds that everybody is looking to pay off so that money can be spent on something else. We said to citizens, look, we've got a problem. We had a big backlog of capital improvement needs. Please come and help us prioritize. Please help us figure out how to pay for these. And over a period of a year, we had nearly 300 citizens participate in looking at these projects and doing site visits and talking to the city staff, talking to their neighbors. And in the end, at the end of a year, they presented 3 proposals to City Council, which City Council did approve, and we went to the voters 3 times, and voters 3 times approved the spending of almost $100 million on 29 capital improvement projects with no increase in taxes. I don't know if that would work now, but what I do know is that that is the approach that we need to take. We need to talk to citizens. We need to say, here are the needs. How can you prioritize them for us? And oh, by the way, we get 1/3 of the tax revenue that Denver does. So when you look at Denver and all the nice goodies they have, there's a reason. We have less money. We have double Tabor in our community. And so when there's a ratchet down, as we've had in the last few years, our revenue, our spending ability goes down. We have the lowest property tax in the state, I believe, and so we have less property tax revenue. Let's talk about that. What kind of community do you want to live in? Do you want to live in a community that has low taxes, but oh, by the way, the result of that is you have things like potholes that are all over the place?
Thank you. I'm afraid your time has expired, and I've got to move on to Amy.
And good quality costs money.
Okay, stormwater. It's kind of become a little bit of a dirty word, but it's a very, very real issue for local government. We at the county, the city of Colorado Springs, other municipalities, we have federal requirements for drainage control. We have an issue, obviously, as we all know, with the redundancy for our water supply as it relates to Colorado Springs Utilities and the SDS. With our neighbors to the south, they have a 1041 permit that allows us to go forward with SDS, and that permit says we have to be controlling stormwater drainage. Stormwater is all about the control of the energy of water as it goes through our region. It's a scientific issue. And what happened in the last couple of years is that there was a citizen-led task force that came together and said, we have got to address stormwater. We know that we've had a lot of political issues with this, but how do we go back? Phase 1 was to identify the problem. Bring in some engineers, scientifically based. What are the projects, the capital projects and the operations and maintenance that are related truly to stormwater drainage? No sky is falling. What's the truth? Go out, have citizens report issues, problems, drainages, whatever it may be. Are they truly related to stormwater drainage runoff? And if they were, they made the list. All that got identified. Phase 2. Now that we've got all these identified, what are the resources that we have in the entire region to address stormwater? What is the city doing? What is the county doing? What are our military installations doing? Educational institutions? How about our partners around? We identified that, and there was a big delta, and that's what all of you got to look at. All of you were then presented with, hey, we don't have enough resources to identify, to take care of stormwater. It was further decided it'll be a fee so that everybody participates, because if it's a tax, then only tax-exempt entities don't pay. So it was decided in all these town halls that it would be a fee, and ultimately people voted. We've got to go back to the science. We've got to ask you, what did you like? What didn't you like? And we've got to go back out and talk about stormwater again.
Thank you. John.
If we don't address this infrastructure problem, we cannot be the city that we want to be, and we've got to get on it quickly. Folks, at this point in time, given the past, the failure of the stormwater issue, the city council not referring a renewal of skip bonds I think we have to take a fresh look at things. And the fact of the matter is the city has immense infrastructure problems. It's not just stormwater. It's roads, bridges, and lots of things. And I honestly believe at this point in time the conversation with the public has to be, for the residents of Colorado Springs, I don't think we can piecemeal this. I don't think we can go, oh, let's deal with stormwater now and then come back 6 months later and let's have another big initiative on roads. I really believe that the city of Colorado Springs has to go through the process of showing the public, and this is not just city staff, this is people in the private sector making a deep dive on the city budget, saying here's projected revenues, here's absolute priorities in terms of infrastructure over the next 5 to 10 years, here's the gap, here's your choices. And then we go out to the public and ask, and we do sophisticated community surveys. Given, everything's on the table, given your choices, what would you prefer as a means to address this? But I really do think at this point in time in our history, it's probably got to be, we got to do regional planning and all that kind of thing, but I honestly believe we've got to address this infrastructure problem very holistically and not piecemeal it.
Thank you. 2 minutes to respond. Mary Lou. Okay. Amy.
I just want to mention one of the reasons that stormwater is its own issue, because we do have a lot of issues. We know that. Let's not forget about information technology. We've talked a little bit about that. That's a massive issue for the city. One of the reasons that we've pulled stormwater and that's been a conversation kind of on its own is because stormwater does not remain within the boundaries of a municipality. Stormwater is by its very nature regional. And so when you have a regional problem where you've got a drainage on the Air Force Academy, either coming through it or coming from it, impacting channelization within a city, and you have to deal with it outside the jurisdiction of that city, it becomes regional. And all of a sudden you have to work together, which I think is a good thing anyway. But you have to work together. This is about the Fountain Creek watershed and controlling the drainage through that watershed. This is why it is a separate issue, why it's being dealt with in a dedicated way, meaning we need dedicated revenue just for stormwater to deal with the responsibilities that we have there. You can't take that by on a boundary basis, because water doesn't care. It just flows, and it's impacting our public infrastructure. And so that's why stormwater is its own separate issue. Indeed, we have many issues to deal with. But I can tell you also that I know from history, from my own preferences and from what we've all done in this community for years, is that we don't like blank checks either. We need to be really serious about the way we're looking at all of our systems throughout the city to share resources, to find efficiencies and address some of those other infrastructure problems through some of those shared resources and ways that we're not working together now. But as it relates to stormwater, this is a separate issue because of our requirements from the federal government and our neighbors to the south and right here in our community morally to take care of our core infrastructure, and because of the way water flows and the way the engineering is designed.
Thank you. All right, we'll have a take back. I think John is next, and then we'll do Joel and get to you, Mary Lou.
Manitou Springs has revenue streams. El Paso County has revenue streams. I am all for regional planning. And I voted for the stormwater proposal. I believe that a regional approach is the most appropriate. But for those of us who live in Colorado Springs, folks, if we deal with stormwater, go deal with, and take something to the ballot, and neglect our roads, our residents are going to be furious. We did some polling in my campaign, and the number one issue is roads. People are embarrassed by the condition of our roads. And I really think we have to be very realistic about what we can expect from our citizen taxpayers. And I'm not sure that they're up for, let's do stormwater here, let's do roads here. I think they are looking for us to take on this infrastructure problem, as I say, holistically. We can plan, and I think these other communities can be very much a part of that, but they have to bring revenue streams to the table too to make this work.
Thank you. Joel?
I wanted to address just a few things. First is that we have the lowest property tax rate. That is correct. It's 4.79 mils, and frequently you have a lot of other taxes is the problem. So while we say that our city property tax is low, people up near my neck of the woods, there's a neighborhood that pays 40 mils to a special metro district. They don't have adequate fire coverage for our city to provide those essential coverages, so they're paying an additional 7 mils to pay a separate fire district. So really, in reality, people are paying 10 times. So that puts us from the lowest property rate when you look at what people are actually paying on their tax bill, that if they don't pay, they're going to have a lien on their properties. They don't really care where it goes, but they know how much they're paying. Then what we're seeing is they're tapped out. We're in the higher percentage. So what we've got to do is really prioritize the dollars that we do have, and it's not easy to raise tax. Everyone says we have low taxes. Why don't we just raise them? Well, unfortunately, we've let it get out of hand with these special districts. We have over 80 of them that we're all paying taxes into in one way or another. The second is on the bond issue. That was 20 years, $11 million a year of payments. It would do $145 million, and my public math says that's $75 million of financing costs. Now, I understand that there's inflation, but if we have a disciplined government, I believe that $75 million could be put to good use if we could do things year in and year out. That would have been lost had we gone the financing route. I'm not ruling it out, but it's something we have to be aware of, and the fact that there'd be 5 years of projects and 15 years of nothing. So a lot can happen to our infrastructure in 15 years. The last is the issue of trust. We can't talk about needing new taxes if we're spending money on severance dollars and outside counsel and $500,000 for City for Champions that most people don't want anyway, and we're going to go build a... Evidently, there's one that does. So that's a violation of trust. So you can't go and say we're going to build a $350 million set of tourist projects and then say, you know what, taxpayers, we need more money from you to do the core services that we're supposed to be doing.
Thank you. Mary Lou.
I'd just like to complete the sentence that I didn't get to complete. I think we need to have a frank conversation about this very topic and about the resources. And the fundamental question is, what kind of community do we want to be? Do we want to be a low-tax community that has poor police response time, extra charges for fire? I also know that there's talk about splitting the staff between 2 fire stations. Is that the kind of community we want? Or do we want a community where public safety responds in a timely way and our roads are fixed and our parks are watered? That's a fundamental decision. One is a low-tax decision. The other takes more money. We are not Target. Expect more and pay less. We can't live like that.
Thank you. Those are the 4 questions that CONO members had prepared at our last meeting. Can you hear me? So I'll make a last call for your questions, which we'll do in a few minutes. If you have a card with a question, please just hold it up. And at CONO, we also believe in fair treatment for all, so now we are going to let the candidates ask some questions. Each of the candidates will have 60 seconds to pose one question to the rest of the group, and then each of you will get 2 minutes to answer. And I think we're going to start with you, please, Joel.
I have a loophole-free question, and it should take much less than 2 minutes to answer. And it should give some citizens comfort about how well we're doing on sticking to core roles. If you are elected mayor, will you insist on prior voter approval before any city sales tax or property tax increment is used to fund City for Champions?
Thank you. Mary Lou, 2 minutes. Don't forget the microphone.
I believe that the vote should go before the citizens. But Joel wants us to sign a pledge, and I'm not willing to sign any kind of pledge until I know all the details. And I must say, at this point, there are issues in C4C that I don't know all the details. I fundamentally believe in the intent of Tabor, which is that citizens would vote on new taxes. I think the elements of C4C are so controversial amongst the taxpayers that it does call for a vote of the citizens if taxpayer dollars are going to be spent.
Thank you. Amy?
Yes.
Yes, if any city sales tax increment or other city tax increment is used, it should go to the voters.
Okay, thank you. Mary Lou, your question for your colleagues.
Well, this was a hard one that you levied on us to ask questions of one another. I think we know each other's vulnerabilities perhaps a little too clearly. So I have come up with a question that we should all be able to answer, and that is, given that one of us looks like will be elected mayor, what other political aspirations do you have? What have you thought about running for your next office?
Okay, we'll start with Amy, please.
I'm planning on running for the hills. I don't have any other aspirations. I'm just, this is something that was a fit. I'm honored to have been asked. I'm honored to be part of the discussion. I will be honored to serve as mayor, and if I don't win, I will be honored to continue to serve as county commissioner, and I look forward to this entire process. Thank you.
Mary Lou, thank you for the opportunity for me to clarify something, because a lot of people say, John, you want to run for governor, don't you? No, I don't, folks. If I was going to run for governor, I would have run in 2006 and probably had a decent shot of winning. But I love being attorney general so much that I didn't want to do that. My wife and I have made a decision that I was going to go into private practice here and have a lucrative life, and she was going to be very happy about that. But over the last year, as we watched developments in Colorado Springs, I made a decision that I was going to run for mayor of Colorado Springs. But I want to make sure everybody understands I will not run for any other office other than mayor of Colorado Springs. If I'm healthy, I'll run for re-election if the voters think that's something I ought to do. But I am not running for any other office. This is it. Thank you.
Thank you. Joel?
When I ran for city council, I committed to one term, and I was fully committed to that. There was no way I was going to do it again. But when I got on city council, what I saw was a need for somebody in the mayor's office to take care of some things that I saw on city council up close and personal. I assure you I have no further aspirations. I like being a pilot. That's what I do. I am a reluctant public servant. I was dragged into this. I will be returning to the plow as the founding fathers intended for their politicians to do.
Thank you. Thank you to all of you who submitted questions. We've got quite a stack here. And did I skip someone?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm eager to get to the audience questions. Amy, you're up.
Thank you. I just want to ask this question. Have you ever supported tax increment financing in the city of Colorado Springs and/or in an urban renewal district, and for what projects? If so, what was the project impact to existing retail and the financial return on investment for the city?
All right.
Yes, I have approved tax increment financing for urban renewal projects. I don't know if I can remember them all, but most recently I participated in the University Village, which during the downturn was a little shaky, but it didn't go under, and any of you who live or shop in that shopping center know that it's been a terrific boon with lots of new stores that were not in Colorado Springs before, and I would rate that urban renewal area as a tremendous success, and that tax increment financing helped clear the land and provide the infrastructure for that area. Not only is it a fun place to shop these days, but it provides untold opportunities for UCCS students to find employment and pay for their college education.
I supported tax increment financing for Copper Ridge development for one reason. It sticks to the core role of government. The dollars that would be used for that go into a separate account that will exclusively pay for the completion of powers to the interstate. That is the role of government. That is one of the reasons Southwest Airlines said they didn't come here, is because we don't have connectivity with the north of the city. We want air service. we want development, we want access to the eastern portion of the city. That is the role of government. And that tax increment financing is to be used only for that purpose. It doesn't support infrastructure that the developer should normally pay. When you talk about University Village, we will not see one dime of revenue from Trader Joe's for the end of 25 years. And the bonds that were issued by the Urban Renewal Authority have been in default since 2011 for that project. So I don't know if that's successful to anybody else, but to me that's not successful. We are subsidizing the developer building the retail. On Copper Ridge, what we're doing is we're having a way to pay to create a road that's been at the top of our transportation improvement plan, which is a regional approach. It is a regional decision about what are the most important projects. And the completion of Powers to the interstate is one of the top projects. And so yes, I did support it, and it is in the role of government, and it does not subsidize a developer.
John, your question.
Well, I wasn't in a position to vote on it, but I want to let you folks know that one of my goals as mayor is to put urban back in urban renewal. I don't think we ought to be using, a single developer comes that wants to develop raw land, and I don't think that's what was contemplated generally in terms of urban renewal. I think you could justify the University Village because you could say that there was some blight on North Nevada. But folks, we got a lot of work to do in the interior area here in downtown Colorado Springs. And to the extent that we use tax increment financing as an urban renewal vehicle, and it's a tried and proven one, because as you know, if there's a default, it's not a burden on the citizens of Colorado Springs, the taxpayers, it's a burden on the bondholders. We gotta be creative and see if we can't redevelop some things in Colorado Springs using these sorts of vehicles.
And this is something, the Copper Ridge development was something that the county was asked to participate in tax increment financing. We did reject that for a number of reasons. There's quite a significant amount of cannibalization that was present in that, which kind of goes to that argument about picking winners and losers and whether something is unique and extraordinary, which of course are different standards and things like that. And the pro forma on that was very difficult to find any return on investment, even though part of the articulated message was to build out Powers. It's a very difficult plan. It's very long term. We're not sure that will ever help provide that. And I do have an issue with using raw land that's not in an urban area as urban renewal. There were a number of issues there that we did not participate in that TIF. Tax increment financing is a tool. It's a tool that's used in states throughout the country. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. As evidence, we did not participate in that one, and I have not voted on any others to participate in at the county level.
John, your question.
Yeah, I like Mary Lou. I'm kind of in a kumbaya mood. So I'm just going to ask if each of you would be willing to say something nice about each of your opponents. Can I start?
Sure.
I love Amy's enthusiasm. I like sitting next to her in these things because I by osmosis, get that enthusiasm. I admire Joel's adherence to principle. He's a bright guy. He understands his principles and he sticks with them. Mary Lou brings a great deal of experience about the city to the table, and I think it just makes for good discussion among the four of us when we bring all these different perspectives to the table.
Thank you. Joel.
Well, this is fun. Mary Lou, when my daughter was in kindergarten, she's a freshman at Arizona State right now, but when she was a kindergarten student, they were studying the letter M. And Faith was an early reader, and she had seen in the newspaper Mayor Mary Lou Makepeace. And she said, wouldn't it be neat if she could come to my kindergarten class since we're studying the letter M? And we helped her write a letter, and Mary Lou showed up. And I actually have pictures with my kindergartner and Mary Lou, so that was really neat. Amy, I really appreciate the commitment that she's given to addressing regional issues. She's been a great chair of the Pikes Peak Rural Transportation Authority, and she has stuck to what the will of the voters were on that, and I think she's done a great job with it. John, of course, I admire your service as Attorney General. I think that's a hard job. You get pulled in a lot of different directions, and I think that you handled it very well, and obviously you're doing a good job. You have, I believe, 2 daughters that are serving in the military.
One's the military, the other's a lawyer.
Well, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you, John, for this question. It makes everybody relax and laugh, and it's great. So I'll start first with Joel, because I didn't really know Joel before this campaign. And I have to say that my opinion of you has changed dramatically. Well, all I knew is what I read in the paper, and not always good. Joel has a philosophy. He's true to it. He doesn't waver. From one forum to the next, we know exactly what he's thinking and what he believes, and that's a rare quality, so thank you. Amy, I knew a little bit from her role at County Commissioner, and we talked early on about her candidacy and her enthusiasm and her excitement, and I share that, John, that's very uplifting, and sometimes I wish I could get a little more body excitement. And of course, John and I have been around here for a long, long time, and our paths have crossed, and I have a great deal of respect for you, but what you bring to the conversation is a lot of facts and figures that the rest of us are a little deficit in, so thank you for that.
Well, thanks, John. I'll start with you. I've known you for years, and I remember a time just a few years ago when we were talking and I was asking you for some of your perspective on the marijuana issue. Haven't even gone there yet, have we? Yeah, right. And I'll never forget it. I'll never forget. You talked about, Amy, when you increased the accessibility and the acceptability in a society, you increased the use. And we had a conversation about that. We talked about, this was it when it was still kind of on the medical side. And John's just someone that you can go and get a perspective, obviously a great legal perspective, some great eye-opening kinds of thoughts that maybe you didn't think before. And I greatly appreciate that and that leadership from that kind of perspective. Mary Lou, you bring such a tremendous demeanor. Calm, we all are running in a million directions. Calm demeanor, and you get into the people side of things, and that matters so much. There are so many pieces to this, so many, the technical pieces, the numbers, the figures, the systems, but it's all about the people, and you bring that very, very well, and that demeanor I appreciate so much. And Joel, you and I have worked together, obviously, just things between city and county, on the RTA, and your stick-to-itiveness, driving for something that you believe in so strongly, and helping people to see things in a different perspective and bring light to what we're supposed to be doing here at the local level is something that I appreciate very much. And I appreciate the question and being able to talk about that with all of you. We're all just people here trying to move the needle in this city.
Thank you. For our audience questions, you'll each have 2 minutes to answer the question. We have not put in time to respond, so we can get to as many of these as possible. So our first here is about an issue that comes up at almost every monthly CONO membership meeting, and that is code enforcement. This says code enforcement has been proven to reduce crime, increase property values, etc. What constitutes adequate code enforcement, and how will you implement it? We'll start with Mary Lou, please.
I was just at home chatting with friends here. Code enforcement is critically important. How we look as a city, as I've mentioned before, is a key element in our marketability. Code enforcement, I believe, has 2 staff people, and they work for the police department. I'm from the era where we had at least a half a dozen. This is a big city. There's a lot of territory to cover. I don't know that code enforcement can ever catch up with the 200 square miles that we have of Colorado Springs. But there are certain areas that need to be targeted by code enforcement. And I mean, not just a notice, but enforcement as well. That is the only way that some people get a notice and they do what they have to do. There are other people, it doesn't matter how many notices you give them. We need to have a penalty that makes them wake up. And if that's a lien on the house, I don't know, but there need to be penalties assigned to people who do not conform.
Thank you. Amy?
To the codes, that is.
So code enforcement, just in general, this is huge for neighborhoods. This is where we have to look at what we've got on the books. That you always start with that, and then how are you enforcing it? That's true of anything. Whether if you put a law on the books, it's only as good as the enforcement. So we have to be very, very serious about making sure that we are. I know this sounds kind of harsh, but that you go get those folks who aren't participating in what the community has agreed to, sometimes that makes it difficult. There are some folks who are in difficult situations that maybe they don't have the money to clean up, maybe they don't have the resources, maybe they're not even local. Sometimes that happens too. And then you go and you put liens on a property, and all of a sudden investment is very difficult to go and bring that property back into production in some way, or bring it back into a good state in the economy. But code enforcement is huge. And what I need to know is from the neighborhoods, what exactly do they want in the policies? And what exactly do they need from the city to enforce that? So when you look at it from the perspective of, do we need more people? Do we need more code enforcers? Do we need a more vibrant policy on the whole enforcement side? Well, that's money, right? You got to go hire somebody. Now you've got another budget line. But let's look at what that does to the community. When you have blighted areas, when you have a blighted home, for example, it's boarded up, whatever, and there's an owner that's not responding. This is one of the extreme examples. Now you can measure the number of police calls. You can measure the number, the value of the property surrounding that home. There's an impact to the city with that. So there's a return on investment to make sure that we're getting that back into production. So code enforcement needs to be handled very seriously. I've got a whole list of ideas as to how we can do that specifically.
Thank you. John?
I've heard from a lot of citizens complaining about the level of code enforcement in Colorado Springs. And you got to have enforcement as part of code enforcement, right? It's got to be an element of it. It's got to be balanced. We don't want Gestapo running around invading people's private lives and things like that, but we do want to deal with hazards and other things that are huge detriments to neighborhoods and to the city as a whole. My personal feeling is, based on what I've been led to believe, we are not properly resourced in code enforcement. And it just seems to me that it's a matter of priority, and we can find the resources, even if we have to take them from other places, because this is something that I'm hearing a lot about from the citizens of Colorado Springs. They want more code enforcement. I think you can make the case that we need more code enforcement, and we ought to have it.
Well, since we're here at the Council of Organizations, thank you, Council of Neighbors and Organizations, I think it's important to put this on the neighborhood level because there are a lot of us that are members of homeowners associations, and God forbid you cross a homeowners association. You're going to have a nasty note in a millisecond about that trailer that you had parked on your street while you were unloading it. You'll come back outside and there'll be a note on it. But not everybody belongs to an HOA. And there's a lot of neighborhoods that were, the older neighborhoods in particular, that don't belong to neighborhoods and have that, and it's a difficult process to formalize that. But I think in the neighborhoods, I think that is where we can take care of a lot of those things, because maybe the lawn is overgrown because a military member is deployed and a young mother is home with 4 or 5 children and they're not able to mow it and they couldn't find anybody to help. Neighbors could be helping neighbors out if there's a website page, hey, I need a little bit of help. Or can we knock on their door and help with issues? I know I did that. I lived on the military base community. That was very frequently, because even worse than HOA is the military housing office. it will be less than a millisecond. It'll be like a nanosecond before you get a notice there. And we helped each other out because we knew that people have issues that are going on. Now, to the repeat offenders, we do need to have enforcement. And City Council passed a budget a number of years ago, and early on in the strong mayor form of government, to add a code enforcement officer, and the mayor refused to do it. Because, you know, there's a spending authorization, but there's no mandate that you must spend the money. And so this is an area where the mayor and city council could sit down and decide whether or not it's a priority. I've got very serious crimes being committed, so I have to balance that with what are the other demands on the police department. But if we can come together and agree on something before the budget is published to the public, we could handle this. Thank you. I got the stop sign.
Our next question concerns putting together the city budget. Do you believe citizens and city councilors should participate in some structured way with the annual budget development prior to its presentation to council in the fall? And I will add how to that question. We'll start with you, please, Amy.
Yes, 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 and yes. How many times can we say yes? The charter says that the mayor initiates the budget. It doesn't say that the mayor never talks to any city council members before ever rolling out the budget. And so here's what happens. You have a press conference, you roll out the budget to the public, and at 11 o'clock in the morning, and no member of city council has seen that budget prior to that time. And what they do is they kind of step back into the back of the room and they kind of lean over to a media person and they say, I never saw it, and I'm not going to support it because I haven't been a part of it, and I'm going to vote against it. And you have instant animosity. Goes to that fighting and that dysfunction that's going on. This is just common respect. Just because it says that the mayor initiates it doesn't mean we shouldn't be talking. Now I'm speaking about the mayor and city council members. We should be sitting down. We spend months prior to our final budget allocation going through all of those things, talking about where things are, what the priorities are, where we need to be moving money if possible, working with our countywide elected officials. What are their priorities? We have to sit down, we have to talk about the issues because the city council members know what their constituencies are telling them. They're closer to the neighborhoods. So we sit down, we talk about those things, we find where we've got some mutual goals. Maybe we don't agree on everything, but we work together to present the preliminary budget. But we also work with the citizens, and that's where we have set up the Citizens Budget Oversight Committee that I mentioned earlier. This is where citizens, some who are in a variety of industries, some who don't have jobs at all, but are citizens who just have a perspective. We've put these people together to say, rank. Talk to us about priorities. Tell us where you think we're getting it right, where we're getting it wrong. What do you think we should be doing? Here's what we're mandated to do. Here's what we have discretion over. And then we listen to those recommendations. We don't agree on every one of them. We debate those. They come in. They present. We work together with the citizens, with the elected officials, and I think we should add that element of working with other municipalities for some of their issues and see how that fits in as well.
John.
Budget preparation is yet another area where if I'm the mayor, the management style will be dramatically different. First of all, throughout the year, council members will have full access to the departments of city government. This notion that you have to, get permission from the mayor's office to talk to departments of the city, that's just ridiculous. The legislative branch should have full access to the executive branch in terms of getting information about the workings of those departments. Yes, the mayor prepares and presents a budget, but there's going to be constant communication with the council about what the mayor's ideas are about where we may need some additional priority and input from the council to the mayor about where we might need to do something different in terms of the budget. It will not be, here it is, take it or leave it, let's move on. There will be a great deal of communication through the process. And by the way, closely related to that, I think the council's got a point on departments. There's essentially 12 departments in the charter. The charter basically says the council determines how many departments there are. And Mayor Bach's taken the position where, for my budgeting purposes, there's only 4. The reason that's significant is you have to get council's permission to transfer funds between budgets. And it's very reasonable that council would want some oversight, over the process of, I'm going to take funds from the Public Works budget and put it in the mayor's budget. Council should have some I understand why they want to have some say over that. I honestly believe the mayor and the council can work that issue out. If they can't, then it's systemic, and it may have to be the work of a charter commission. But I'm absolutely confident that a mayor and council working together can reach agreement as to how transfers between departments, which ones are further scrutinized by the council.
Thank you. Joel?
Well, I think I bring some unique perspective to this issue. First, to address Amy's issue, nobody in council got together in the back of the room and said, we didn't get included, we're not going to support it. Never happened. It was more of, what's in it? What's in it? Did they fund this? How are they going to fund that? We shouldn't be waiting until the budget's released to find that out. And I think everyone agrees here that there needs to be a process that includes not only the public, but also city council, because they're the ones with the power of the purse. We need to get together and, again, prioritize on those core roles that I'll keep hammering and saying, how are we spending our dollars? To John's point, the city is actually run with 19 departments. There are 12 that are mentioned in the charter that are either elected by the department heads, that are elected by the people, or appointed by the mayor or council. That's how the 12 number came up. And there is city code that says within a department, the mayor can move money around. So by asking for more departments, it's more transparency. Again, that's that trust of the people, is to make sure that not only are we prioritizing the focus of our dollars, but we're making it transparent. So not one time that the mayor asked to come forward did council thumb their nose and say, we're not going to reprioritize that, if it was well presented and there was a good reason for doing it. So if you want to move money from one department to another, it's not a big deal. You come to council, you give the reasons why, you have a public hearing so the public can see why, and it shouldn't be a contentious issue at all. Regarding how we work with council ahead of time, City Council, when we were seated in April of 13, established a budget committee that sat down to try to come up with those budget priorities. And with those budget priorities, they transmitted those to the mayor's office. And again, we talk a lot about personalities, but we were blessed with the fact in the first strong mayor, we had a personality that identified some problems with the system. We shouldn't wait till the next personality comes around for citizens to be able to have a government they can rely on. We should have that worked out, and it needs to be changed so that no matter what the personality, we're serving the citizens with transparency.
Sounds like we all agree that it hasn't worked well in the past. And it sounds like we all agree that we would be much more open. I think that the budget process, though, should go on most of the year. It shouldn't just be the 24 hours before the budget document is presented to the public and city council. I would think that the planning that I would instigate would help solve this. For instance, do you know that there are 3 strategic plans for the city? One for city council, one for the mayor, and one for utilities. And I've been told that, well, they're pretty much in sync. Well, planning is where you sit down together and you identify what direction you want to go and how you think you're going to get there. And then you either agree or disagree, and you move forward on the areas where you can find agreement. And then you budget around that. It's a whole different process than the past. And my feeling is that that alone would go a long way toward improving the relationship between the mayor and city council. You know, when we talk about the strong versus the weak mayor, I hate those terms because I don't think I was a weak mayor, and somehow Steve Bach has figured out that strong means strong arm. I don't think that's what we want going forward. I think we want collaboration, working together, and getting stuff done for the good of the city.
Thank you. Our next question. There is a booming population of elderly. We as a city are very behind in how we address the aging. Lack of affordable housing, transportation, and only one senior center. Now the city wants the YMCA to run the senior center. Do you support this move? And what ideas do you have for getting our city up to date and ready to take care of the expanding older adult population? By 2025, 1 in 4 citizens will be 65 or older. We'll start this one with you, John, please.
The demographics are startling. What percentage of our population is going to be elderly? And we do need to deal with that. And that means some affordable housing issues. We have not, in Colorado Springs, over the last several years, taken full advantage of opportunities that are available to us. We need to straighten out some issues in city housing, get through a HUD audit that's going on right now, and begin to develop some affordable housing that will be of assistance to our seniors. The senior center problem is a significant one. Folks, as Attorney General, I was in senior centers all over this state, and they can be a tremendous resource for seniors in terms of educating them about consumer protection dangers, health issues, and things like that. And frankly, a city this size ought to have multiple senior center locations. And therein is part of the problem. As Mary Lou knows, the financing of our senior center was initially started out with some income from the shopping center that surrounds it. That has essentially been exhausted. There's now like about a $50,000 a year deficit, and we need stable funding for the senior center. This contract may be it. The YMCA has a good history. I think they've done a good job in the city's management of swimming pools and things like that. And the great thing they can do is put senior centers in other Y facilities that are all spread out over the city. I don't know the particulars of the contract, but I wouldn't poo-poo it. And they're committed not to charging fees which is one of the big concerns that people have had. Are they going to charge fees to seniors that they can't afford? My discussions with the Y folks are that they have the right attitude and they could be pretty productive. But as I say, I don't know the details of the contract.
Thank you. Joel.
Again, I don't know the details of the contract either, but if we can partner with nonprofits to perform an essential service for our citizens and they're going to be served, then I think it's something that we should definitely look into and be willing to accept if it's the right agreement. The other thing that we face is communications with our senior citizens. John mentioned, that was the way that he could get word out about predatory practices on seniors. Seniors are not on the internet, they're not doing Twitter, so we have to make sure that we're using city's resources to communicate with seniors, and however we do that, whether that's through neighborhood organizations or whether that's through senior centers, that we are communicating with them and making them aware of some issues that are some resources that are available. Maybe not all city resources, but the tool the city has for communications should be used to inform those citizens. I was flying with a gentleman whose father is retired here and is taking care of a spouse with dementia. And, he's not in great health either. He wasn't aware that there's an area agency on the aging as part of Pikes Peak Area Council of Governments. And there are options and there are resources that are available, but he didn't know about them. So we do need to communicate what we do have. Regarding transportation, the first thing we need to do is make our commitments that we promised voters for PPRTA, the maintenance of effort. We're not going to get there right away, but the voters were promised that when we voted as part of PPRTA was transit dollars, that we weren't going to supplant the transit dollars that are already in the general fund with PPRTA dollars. They were going to be in addition. So we need to get back up to where we need to be on that, and transit is very important. Some of the elderly, as they decide to give up their licenses, transit is a way of life. It is the way you get to the doctor, to the grocery store, to do anything in the city. And so we've got to live up to that commitment. There's a lot of other things we can do, and I'm sure that I'm out of time.
The senior center is near and dear to me. I was one of two people. Nancy Lewis was the other person, and we worked to develop the senior center when we were gifted with that shopping center, Gulf Acres Shopping Center. And the original intent was to have a senior center, and there would be services that served seniors and some businesses in the surrounding shops. Well, that worked for a while, and then it didn't really work. And those buildings haven't been maintained. The senior center has been band-aided over the years. It's a wonderful resource. It's an award-winning resource. We should be very, very proud of it. And any senior who goes there will sing its praises. Here's my take on it. We owe seniors at least one senior center, and we shouldn't be talking about changing it. I'm glad you have confidence in the why, but I think we need to say as a city loud and clear, we need to provide senior centers. I would like to take that whole center, find us a willing developer, plow the whole thing under, and let's start over. Let's develop senior housing over there. We do have a Silver Key complex over there for seniors. We could add many more apartments for seniors on that space, rebuild the senior center into something modern with more services, and I think if we had a significant collection of people living there, that some of those shops would come back because there would be a market for whatever goods and services they're selling. I think we need to have a big vision, not a stopgap vision, and I will work very hard with those citizens who are so committed to keep that center as precious as it is. It's a wonderful asset. Let's not sell it short.
I believe strongly in the city being a participant in this and not shying away from just standing right up and saying, we need to talk about this, we need to be able to provide some resources for this. This is part of our society here, and we take care of a number of segments of our society, and seniors cannot be an exception. And of course, we do have area on aging. We do a lot of work through our Department of Human Services throughout the community, and the city needs to be at the table as a participant in this, and sometimes that means some city resources, but it also means the partnerships that have been alluded to through the faith-based community, through nonprofit communities. We talked about the affordable housing issues. We've talked a lot about those and ways to incent more of those and ways to gain access to more of those. Having more senior centers around the region. When you have one, now you get into the mobility issue. And when we get into transit and mobility, we get into a situation where how do you add more routes? How do you add more accessibility there? One of the ways that you add more accessibility is you have more choice ridership. How do we drive more choice ridership into our transit system so that we can increase routes? All of these things work together, and that's why we have to have some very, very intentional regional planning, and the city needs to be at the table for that. The maintenance of effort by the city for transit has been a major issue. PPRTA, of course, of the 1 cent, 10% goes to transit. That's a done deal, but how about that maintenance of effort from the city? That matters to people who rely on this transportation, and we simply can't ignore it. It may not be the most fun thing to have to deal with because it's a tough issue, but we have to deal with it. And I think we need more centers, and we need to plan for that in a way that we can attack both of those issues very, very readily. I'm not afraid of looking at a new possible contract because there may be great fruit to bear in that. We haven't had the opportunity to sit at the table and look at that, but I'm open to those ideas that may help with this situation.
Thank you. Well, two of you have foreshadowed our next question, which is about the PPRTA. In 2004, future PPRTA taxpayers were promised that the city would continue funding transit and transportation maintenance at the then current level. Do you consider this aspirational or a commitment? If a commitment, how would you prioritize funding in your proposed budget? Start with you, please, Joel.
Well, as the vice chair of the PPRTA board, I helped the board write a letter back to the city saying that because what the great thing about PPRTA is there's a Citizens Advisory Council that provides input to the board about decisions and makes it more transparency. And the CAC board was very upset about the failure of the city to provide those dollars. Now, I think the CAC was very understanding of the fact that we had a major recession and that those promises could not be met. But as the revenues of the city began to rise and the transit dollars and the allotment did not, they had justified reason to be concerned, and they asked the city, and the response, just to put it in context, was the city said, well, that's aspirational only. It's true. There's nothing, you can't bind somebody to say they have to, that's not legally allowed. But the way the city should have answered it is, here's our plan in 5 years to get healthy on this again. We know that this was a commitment to the citizens. Here's how our general fund has grown, and here's how we're honoring that commitment to the citizens. So we would definitely have to do that. I'm committed to doing that and working with the city council to make sure that we prioritize it. I can't remember the other part of the question.
How would you prioritize funding in your proposed budget?
Yeah. Well, I think that just goes with city council. Again, it's a matter of trust in government. It keeps coming back to that. Because when we went to citizens to say, this is PPRTA, this is what it's going to be used for, it's not going to replace existing funding, that was promises. And one of the things PPRTA says is promises made, promises kept. When you see a PPRTA project that is completed, it was a promise that was made to the citizens who voted for it, and the sign goes on there that says promises made, promises kept. And when we make promises and we don't keep them, we violate that trust, and again, that is fundamental.
Thank you. Mary Lou.
Well, I recall we had the same problem with the TOPS funds, where we had a maintenance of effort promise there, and sort of sticky fingers went in to allocate that money someplace else. And as Joel said, that's a matter of trust. I also understand that even as some money has been put back into the fund, with the other hand, some money is being taken out of the fund to supplement funding for things like the Fillmore interchange to provide trucks for the Fillmore project. So it's a mess, and when the government isn't honest with you, why would you ever vote for, say, an extension of TOPS if you know that that's not what's going to happen? Why would you vote for any kind of tax question when you don't have confidence that that's how the money is going to be spent? I don't blame you. I don't trust it either. So the transit is a complicated thing, and it's very important to so many segments of the population, to the disability community, to the senior community, to young professionals who don't want to own a car, to employers who need their employees to get to work, to the employees who, if they miss a bus, have to wait another hour to catch it and are late to work. I think it's time to really look at a regional transit system. I think it's a bit away, but I think we need, again, to have a frank and honest conversation about the bus system, who, in an effort to serve the whole community, have these long headers, and as a result, serves no one well. And so we need to take a sharp look at our bus system. Do we need express routes? Do we need jitneys? Do we need to mobilize some of those trolley cars that have been sitting up there in the museum and have a trolley downtown or between the colleges or something? I mean, I think we have to be thinking, and not always a gas-guzzling bus. And if there's a bus system, it should be a green bus system, not one that takes gasoline.
Thank you. Amy.
Wow, transit. A lot has been said already. This is a huge issue, and I don't want to lose track of what transit means to the city and the region as a whole in terms of our competitiveness. Because when we talk to the employers and we talk to both from outside this region and from within the region, the number one thing they talk about is the workforce. And when we talk to the workforce, they talk about the livability and the walkability and the accessibility within a community and all of the things that are very competitive in nature. So having a vibrant transit system is critically important for a number of reasons. Now, that's really easy to say without $1 billion. And so it's not just, well, let's just go get transit, because everything costs money. And transit systems, public transportation is in almost all cases subsidized to some level. So let's go back to the local level. The letter that was referred to that went to the city that said, we do not believe that this is an aspirational goal, that is the maintenance of effort that was promised to you when you voted on RTA. My name was on that letter. I was chair of the RTA, and it wasn't received very well by some folks, and that's okay. But it's not aspirational. It is a promise, and you voted, and maybe some of you made a decision on voting for that 1-cent sales tax because you knew that there wasn't going to be a bait and switch, that there would be a maintenance of effort. And so we've got to be very serious about prioritizing our budget. Now that goes into the budget. How do we prioritize? How do we take the limited resources that we have, and we have resources, there are a lot of resources at the city, there are a lot of resources in local government, and make them go further. And I start by looking at the systems from a regional perspective and transforming them and doing things differently. Things that will change the number of dollars that we're spending and the way we're delivering the services. That is fundamental to go through, scrub the budget line by line and roll by roll in order to find those efficiencies.
The hour is late, so I'm going to stick to answering the question that was asked. Aspirational or not, this was a commitment that was made to maintain the $5.8 million maintenance of effort. Yes, we had a tremendous downturn in sales tax revenue, and the city's, was justified in saying we can't pay it. We've gradually creeped back to $4 million. We're still $1.8 million short. We need to make up that difference as quickly as possible. I'm not sure it can be done in a year, but it seems to me in 2 years, 3 years at the outset, we need to be back to that maintenance of effort. And frankly, given what our transit needs are, we need to look at whether the city ought to be putting more money into transit beyond the maintenance of effort commitment.
Thank you. Each of the candidates will now give their closing statements, 3 minutes each. We drew straws to determine the order, and Amy will go first.
Thank you very much. Folks, you're troopers, and I appreciate you staying here and talking about these things. Very, very important. This is our community. These are our neighbors, our neighborhoods, and the future of our city.